what the hell is duck butter out on the lake?
Yeah, you know what duck butter out on the lake is.
I imagine it's attractive girls or vagina, but I don't know what what's Queef City? What is that?
It's Quiff City.
No, it's Queef. Oh, it was Queef. I thought
Queef City is going to be this weekend.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons. Alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back at time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit chatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And if you want to hang out with us live, you can follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's the Shat the Movies on YouTube. There we play video games, we host watch parties, we do live recordings, and we edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Gene, tonight I'm very excited. We're going to go back to, I think, the roots of my movie fandom. It was a low-budget movie that your friends would talk about. It wasn't this high production value, big hit. This movie, it's got a warm place in my heart, and I think a lot of people love this film as well. And that's why I was very excited when our great listener, James H., wrote in and said, please review the 1986 independent fantasy revenge film, The Wraith.
And James wrote in and said, greetings, Shat Squad. For 15 years, I've been a sergeant for the Florida Department of Corrections, and half my daily job includes loads of paperwork. So having the podcast on in the background helps me stay focused as I listen and type up reports. So thank you so much for doing what you do. Your chemistry is unmatched. I almost immediately knew I was going to sponsor a movie after like 2 or 3 podcasts in. I just had to figure out which one. My brother Mike and I are big movie fans, so I started going through some of our other favorite movies, and I started with lesser-known movies and came up with The Wraith, Gladiator from 1992, and Arena 1989. I see a theme here. I ultimately settled on my favorite of the 3, which obviously was The Wraith. This, to me, looking back, was a perfect 80s movie. It had young, good-looking cast, kick-ass music, boobies, and an awesome car. I know it won't get the score I believe it deserves, but what I'm excited about is to have it officially reviewed by Shat the Movies crew. This movie, along with many others, bring me right back to sitting on my mother's brown shag carpet with popcorn and my brother right next to me. I can literally smell and hear the memories. That is why I love movies, and mostly 80s and early 90s movies, because they are my time machines. I hope you enjoy the movie, and I hope you keep doing what you've been doing, because I love reliving movies and feeling young again. Best wishes, James H.
James, thank you very much for the commission. And I'm really glad, even though I love your sport, that we have not crossed paths in my entire 20 years in Florida, because that would be awkward, Gene. I get arraigned or I get booked somewhere. I don't know if he's in a prison or a jail, and he hears my voice and he pokes his head around, and that would be how we met.
We asked during Tango and Cash how a person goes from 18 months minimum security to ending up in the utopian rape dungeon. And now I think we know. James is distracted by the incredibly funny Shat the Movies podcast.
That's exactly
something happened with the paperwork there.
That's it. That's what happened in Tango and Cash.
Well, The Wraith is a 1986 independent action fantasy starring Charlie Sheen, Sherilyn Fenn, Nick Cassavetes, and Randy Quaid. It was theatrically released on November 21st, 1986 on just 88 screens in the United States by New Century Vista Film Company. In the Philippines, The Wraith was released as Black Moon Rising Part 2, connecting it to the unrelated film Black Moon Rising starring Tommy Lee Jones. In Germany, it was released under the title Interceptor Phantom der Ewigkeit, or Interceptor Phantom of Eternity. It holds a 36% rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 14 reviews. So Big D, you alluded to the fact that you have a history with this movie. Let's start with your memories.
So I don't remember when I saw it first. I had to have been young because it was around the time that the film came out. So it had to have been the only other option. There was no video stores at that point. It was HBO. And the main thing I remember that I'm sure everybody who remembers this film, it's the Dodge M4S Turbo Interceptor. Back then, I used to think this was the coolest. I thought Kit was the coolest. And I think it holds up to today. I mean, we're now 40 years past this, close to it, and the car still looks cool. It still works. And I know we've never formally done like a top 25 TV vehicles of the 80s and 90s, but this has to be up there on any 25 list.
If it were up to me in the video store, I would have rented this movie multiple times as a kid. But as we've discussed on the podcast, Big D, back then we weren't in control of what our parents rented. It was whatever they wanted to watch at the time. And despite begging to see the Wraith, I never got to as a kid. I didn't know Charlie Sheen was in it because, of course, in the posters, you can't see his face. In preparing for the podcast, I saw it was set in Arizona, got very excited, and then I saw that car. It was a thing of beauty. I was sold.
So, Gene, the car is obviously, it's the biggest character in the film. And as I was doing my research on this, I was also putting out a tweet about the film we just did, Tango and Cash, about the top 10 80s badasses, who they were. And people seemed to love the question. People all had a different opinion on who they thought should be on the list. We had good interactions. So when we got to the vehicles here, I was like, you know what? I think this would be something good for the audience and us to interact. So I found an app today that will allow us to do a kind of like an NCAA college basketball brackets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try something new here. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'm going to do the top 16 brackets for 1980s vehicles and cars. Each week, you can vote on the first round, second round, third round, and then the championship game. And I think it'll be something fun for people to interact. If nobody does it, then it goes away.
When we did March Madness a few years back during early COVID days, we did a live stream where we kind of pitted some of our top movies, the top ranking movies of Shat, against each other and let the audience vote on that. That was hugely successful. And I think, based on what we saw from the Tango and Cash badasses of the 80s discussion, I think people would really like this. So go check it out, guys. Big D, man, you were just cutting edge these days. You got Chat GPT last week. You're doing brackets this week.
Yeah.
And I'm a scientist there in your Florida home.
I am. And I'm going to take this moment to plug the Dodge M4S Interceptor, because a lot of people may not have seen it. And I know if we don't get into car facts early, people are going to complain. So I think I'll start off with this before we even get to the film, Gene. This was a concept car that turned into an actual physical prototype. Now, Bob Ackerman gets credit for the design, and the M4S stood for mid-engine four-cylinder sport. The PPG stood for the fact that it was supposed to be the pace car in the Indy PPG World Series. The engine was a forced induction turbocharged 2.2-liter inline, and the dual superchargers put out 440 horsepower. It did 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds, and it actually did 195 miles an hour. So this was the fastest four-cylinder car at that time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a massive departure from Dodge's normal theory that there's no replacement for displacement. This is a fairly miserly engine with just some really cool technology driving that massive horsepower.
Plus, it almost killed one of the stuntmen who got into it and thought it was one of these like regular production cars. He almost killed himself. One of them disappeared. The other one got sold, and it appeared on the Jay Leno Garage Cult Classic episode. Charlie Sheen is in it in the beginning. So check out this car. I don't think we're going to talk about it much more, but it's a pretty cool car, and it's memorable for any 80s film.
All right, well, with that, let's hit the trailer.
An evil force took his life. An unearthly power has brought him back. He is a phantom, a wraith, a cosmic spirit given another chance.
Are you new in town?
Yeah. Who's the kid?
I turned my back, and the next second he was there. Like magic, almost.
You ever seen one of those before? Let's just add it to our collection.
kid out there using his car to kill people. Not that it's such a big deal, since it seems to be your gang he's got it in for.
Hold on! Grab the shotgun, Mama Luca.
A wraith, man! A ghost! An evil spirit, and it ain't cool!
What are you doing? Packard, stop
Get in the car!
What are you doing, man? You
Get out of my face, burger boy! You wind up dead like your brother!
Hey! Who is that guy?
I don't know, but whoever he was, he's weird and ticked off.
I seen his eyes, Loomis!
Who are you?
Who are you?
The Wraith. If you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to fear.
In Arizona, gang leader Packard Walsh coerces people into betting their cars on races. He controls everyone through intimidation, including Carrie Johnson, whom he views as his property. Carrie's boyfriend, Jamie Hankins, was the victim of an unsolved murder, and Carrie, who is with him, has no memory of the traumatic event. One day, the mysterious Jake Casey arrives in Brooks, Arizona, riding a dirt bike. He befriends Jamie's brother, Billy, and Carrie. So in the description, I said that Packard coerces people into betting their cars on races. What he really does is says, hey, you're going to race me. You have no choice. And if I win, I get your car. There doesn't even seem to be like a discussion of what if the other person wins? Like, do they get Packard's car? Because you know they're not going to. But we see Packard's gang roll up on this couple. They're out on a romantic night drive in the Arizona desert. And as I'm watching this, it's just darkness around them. The car is just barely lit. And I honestly felt this unexpected dread and thought, oh my God, like they're out there all alone in the desert on the road, no way to call for help. They're so fucked. What are they thinking being out there at night? And then I realized, holy shit, I did this regularly as a teenager. We would drive to California, we drive to Flagstaff, we drive to Mexico with no cell phone, no navigation, middle of the night, 18-year-olds. It seems insane now.
So I grew up in the Northeast. I don't know what it's like to grow up in the desert, in the Expanse. So I got to ask you some questions here so we can get familiar with the setting. So I've been to Arizona twice to visit you. So my experience is limited, but Arizona to me, it seems like a lawless no man's land. People are afraid to call the police. It looks like Mad Max, the Australian outback. People are afraid of drifters and smugglers. It is a super dangerous place. And I don't know, is this what happens? Because these guys, it seems like it's something they do in Arizona. He's like, hey guys, she's all ours, nice and legal. Is Arizona this frightening?
I mean, it is exceptionally easy to sell cars here, to transfer titles. That is all real. Now, in the movie, I was confused as to why somebody would be carrying their auto title in their glove box, but maybe that's just a thing. But it is, I mean, Arizona is still, it's like the Florida of the West, I guess. It's very much does not want to be tamed. Firearms are everywhere. You can still go out and shoot in the desert. And yeah, your road trips. I mean, it's not as bad as West Texas, but you can go a while without seeing another person.
Is it typical in Arizona for the tough guys to be, look like David Hasselhoff? A lot of turquoise silver jewelry, a puka shell necklace. Is that a usual guy should be afraid of carjacking me?
So the scarier guys are the sheriffs around here. If you look at like Sheriff Lamb, if you look at Mark Lamb, his campaign photo, I think the last one that he did, he's standing in the middle of Goldfield Ghost Town. He's got his cowboy hat on. He's got like a ballistic, like tactical vest with the body armor. He's got multiple firearms on him. And then he's got like an American flag draped over his shoulder, like toga style. He looks kind of like Homelander or something, standing out there in the middle of this ghost town. And that's the sheriff who's, I believe, running for Congress. There is outside of Phoenix, it really does get quite strange.
But it's a fucking scary place. I mean, why do they name every physical location something mysterious? It's dark. It's supernatural. Is it meant to scare people? Because listen, Sheen, you've lived in Arizona now how long?
We moved here in 1983,
Mm-hmm.
but in this last stint, I've been here for 10 years now. Again.
Okay, so in the movie, they famously go to Dragonfire Crossing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, fuck, okay, that's something for the movie. I'm going to give you some quick ones here. You tell me, is it real or is it not?
Yeah.
Morning Hollow.
Is that with OU or just
yes,
OR?
OU. Morning Hollow.
I'm going to say no.
That is a real place.
Where is that?
I don't know. It's in Arizona. Widow's Peak.
I mean, I have one.
That is in Arizona. Desolation Canyon.
No.
That is in Arizona.
What?
Phantom Falls.
No.
That is real. Graveyard Gulch.
No.
That is real.
Wait, are these all in two? Are these
They're
all
in Arizona? They're all
not
in Arizona.
Tucson studios?
They are all in Arizona. Okay. So I did Graveyard Gulch.
Yeah.
How about Banshee Bluff?
No.
That's real. Sorrow's End.
No.
That's real. Devil's Den.
I mean, I've been to Devil's Throne, so I'm going to say, yeah, that one's real.
Okay, I'll cut it short. All of these are real. Cursed Caverns, Wailing Winds, Midnight Marsh, Dreadful Dunes, and Sinister Valley. Those are all real.
You missed the best one, Bloody Basin.
Oh, I did miss that one.
Yeah, there's Bloody Basin. We got Tombstone, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people in Arizona drink WD-40 brake fluid and hydraulic fluid for fun?
No, worse. We drink Santan Brewing Company beers, so it's just about as bad. Big D, you're really focused on the names of the places in Arizona and how ridiculous they are. I think what you were getting at with those costume choices is sort of the gang that Packard has together. And they all focus around Packard himself, who is played by Nick Cassavetes. Definitely a Nepo baby of the 80s. And James, in commissioning this movie, he wrote and he said, I can't help but laugh at Packard. He was the leader of this gang, the one who just killed a man to take his girl, and a street racer who basically steals people's cars. And his weapon is a switchblade. Like, come on, dude. In the same scene, we see the switchblade come out, and we also get a gem of a prance by the dastardly Packard after he takes the pink slip to the Daytona and bounces like a fairy back to his car. I kid you not, guys. I do a Leonardo DiCaprio type meme move and pop out of my seat and say, look at the scary fairy, and my girlfriend hates it. I agree 100%. Packard is out of his depth. He could only be the big bad in a place like Brooks, Arizona, because his gang's entire model would get them arrested in their first week of operation. First of all, they don't kill the people that they rob. They just send them walking. I don't see how these initial victims, this guy and his gal, who was threatened with rape, by the way, doesn't just go straight to the sheriff and say, hey, Packard and his boys stole my car last night. My car looks like this. I've got this Daytona. And then the sheriff would go to Packard's very obvious hideout and say, hey, the entire fucking car is still right here. The car is literally there in the garage. It's not even disassembled. You're under arrest. Like, they're running a chop shop that doesn't bother to chop up the car. They're not wearing any disguises. They're using each other's names. Mm-hmm. And these guys are not subtle. They're very obvious to find, Big D. As you said, some trademark looks.
Yeah, but Gene, it's because she's all theirs, nice and legal. Yeah. And you forget the fact that Arizona police, what are they going to do? It's a lawless hellscape. Nobody in this film ever calls the police for any reason. Sexual battery? Nah. Rape? Nah. Robbery? Grand Theft Auto? No. There's nothing. I don't know why. And then it starts to kick into me. Okay, we see in the beginning, much like your true story about the sheriff who's up for re-election, the sheriff in this is Loomis. He's been elected multiple times because we see his billboard, and he is the perfect mix of asshole and incompetent. He goes to the drive-in and he's eating a burger. He throws the trash all over the floor of the parking lot. Who does that? He's getting schooled by Packard, who's an idiot. You know, he's a high school dropout. Not that that's a bad thing, but we'll just say he shouldn't know proper police procedure, but he's schooling the sheriff on it. When he goes to Packard's house, he doesn't announce himself. He just walks in. There's a teenager naked having sex with him. I think that would be a problem. And it gets even worse when Rughead, I'm jumping a bit ahead here, but Rughead, who is like the MacGyver of the team, he's the one who's giving them an edge in the racing scene, developing things with his blueprints. He confesses that Jamie was killed by Packard. He saw the body. Does Loomis think, wow, this is an opportunity. I'm going to bring Packard to justice. I'm going to close this unsolved case. No. He doesn't do that. He doesn't take him down to the station to book him and get a statement. He says, just go home. Go home. At the end, Packard's dead, body in the road. Hey, Sheriff, should we set up a roadblock? Roadblocks won't stop nothing that can't be stopped. They don't investigate the scene. They don't clean it up. He doesn't care. I think, is he the big villain? Like in The Lost Boys, where the guy at the bookstore was the big vampire. Is he the head of Packard's gang?
I would say that you're onto something, except for the fact that it's Randy Quaid. Like, no one would ever cast Randy Quaid as the big bad anything. He's Randy Quaid. I think he's just supposed to be a small town, like, bumbling dork sheriff. But yeah, he also does things like just walk into the back of the burger shop, like just walks in, pours himself a cup of coffee. He's in there. I mean, he's a swinging dick, but I don't think he's the big bad. I would just say he's flat out incompetent.
Yeah.
Packard's control of the illegal races comes to an end when an all-black Dodge M4S Turbo Interceptor supercar appears. Its spooky driver challenges Packard's gang to a race, ending in crashes that kill 2 gang members. Their bodies appear unharmed afterward, except for burned-out eye sockets. The Turbo Interceptor reconstructs itself and eludes the pursuing Sheriff Loomis in a cloud of glowing light.
Okay, so at this point, the Wraith gets its first victim. It gets revenge on the first guy, Oogie. He crashes, and the gang says, we think he's going to be back again. This car is souped up. We need some kind of an edge. So Rughead had designed what he calls the digital radio killer. It looks like a large mayonnaise jar with an antenna, some wires, and some batteries. It is some kind of remote kill switch.
You just described the design of half of the things in this movie. It's a mayonnaise jar with an antenna coming out of it.
So I don't know. I'm questioning why they introduced this in the first act, because Packard's gang never uses it. Typically, when someone is shown, and it's Chekhov's gun, when you show something in the first act, it should come back. And I'm wondering, because typically characters, when you face an overpowered enemy, first, you get your ass kicked, then you feel hopeless, then you do some research or you talk to someone, you discover the enemy's weakness. Then you make a plan, you exploit it. You want to even the odds. I wish the gang had actually used this and found a way that they could have survived better, because it would have raised the stakes. If they somehow made the Wraith not indestructible, when we get Jake, facing off against Packard on an even playing field, at the end, you would have wondered who's going to survive. But in this, he uses the same tactic every single time and they fall for it.
Normally, I'd agree with you, but I don't think this is that movie. So I recently saw Sisu in the theater and I was discussing it with King B afterward. And he pointed out that Sisu is like a slasher film from the viewpoint of the slasher. It's like if you did Friday the 13th, but it's from Jason's viewpoint. And Jason's just thinking, why won't this bitch just die? I'm just trying to kill her, And I think that that's what we're seeing here in The Wraith, is that it's a slasher movie from the viewpoint of the killer. So the Wraith is the killer. He's unstoppable. And so they shouldn't be able to stop him. So I don't think it needs that element of a challenge. But when they introduced the digital radio killer, I thought it was some throwaway gadget that for some reason enabled Packard to shut off people's stereos remotely. It's a terrible name.
Yeah.
Remote kill switch. Digital radio killer makes no sense.
I thought it was something that would block the police from communicating.
That makes sense too.
That was okay, it's kind of hey, let's get a blackout going. Let's block the signal as we do our illegal street race.
But of course, it's not going to work on the Turbo Interceptor, regardless of what it is, because this car was formed by 4 ghostly meteorites and it can reassemble itself at will. It is the most OP vehicle I think we've seen on Shat the Movies.
I think it runs on magic. It runs on black magic. That's all it runs on. And Packard's gang, they're not the brightest. They are not like we would normally see in a racing movie where you got a bunch of gearheads. This isn't Fast and the Furious with Dom, Brian, and Letty sitting around talking car parts, talking performance. They don't do it. There's no building montage. When Jake comes in with his shotgun that just has a couple LEDs to show us it's a spaceman or demon or Wraith's gun, he destroys every vehicle. He shoots them up. There's explosions. You see engines on the floor. It is total carnage. I'm thinking these guys are going to be out of commission for at least maybe 2-3 months, or there's a backup car that they're going to come out. Fuck no. Next morning, the entire gang is back on the road, and I know that they've been damaged because there's duct tape and gray spray paint all over the cars. These are the fastest mechanics.
The gang did clearly say that they were busting knuckles on bodies all day, and Rughead is established as a bit of a genius. So I say I'm willing to go with it. And by the way, shout out to Clint Howard, who plays Rughead. He also played Slinky in our previous Shat movie, Tango and Cash. Here's a crazy thing to think about. Between this movie that was filmed in 86, where Rughead looks like he might be like a teenager or a guy in his 20s, and then Tango and Cash, which was 1989. There's 3 years between. What happened to this guy? Like the late 80s were really rough on him.
Well, I think he's a dedicated method actor. So I think he was playing
the
role.
or meth head?
Maybe both. He was playing the role of the serial killer in Tango and Cash, and he really got into it. He was like a Heath Ledger of his day.
Yeah, I guess. Well, 2 more gang members, Skank and Gutter Boy, are killed when the Turbo Interceptor races through the gang's warehouse. With Packard's gang mostly gone, Rughead, the gang's tech geek, figures out why the gang had been targeted. When Loomis arrives at the scene of the destruction, Rughead tells him Packard and his gang had murdered Jamie Hankins. So, Big D, if you recall, I shat all over Nicolas Cage's Valley Girl for overusing teen slang. It was annoying to me. I didn't think kids actually talk like that and use slang as often as they did. The Wraith takes it to a whole new level. I feel like they're just making shit up as they go. They've got lines like, "You two crater heads get tired of mining for fool's gold." Yeah. And my personal favorite, "Those guys got lunched." At first, I thought this was a flaw in the movie, just some bad writing. But then I realized it's much more likely that wordplay is entirely intentional, with lines like, "It's about time we got into somebody's ass, and I'm going to knock his ass lower than whale shit."
You see, I thought this was an Arizona thing again.
Yeah,
because I assumed a human wrote this. There was no ChatGPT writing this script. Sure. It would have been much better. But Gene, there's a couple, besides the fact that all the characters have nicknames. There's Skank, Gutter Boy, Rughead, Augie. What the hell is duck butter out on the lake?
Yeah, you know what duck butter out on the lake is.
I imagine it's attractive girls or vagina, but I don't know what what's Queef City? What is that?
It's Quiff City.
No, it's Queef. Oh, it was Queef.
I thought Queef City is going to be this weekend.
Okay. And then why did they call, when they're talking in the beginning about Jake, they call him a cockstacker?
Yeah.
Is that a new slang for homosexual? I've never heard of cockstacker. I think
they're just trying to keep that PG-13 rating.
If somebody called me a cockstacker, I'd be like, what does that mean? Is that a compliment? What are you?
It sounds like a dude who makes amazing sandwiches.
Yeah, I'm not a cockstacker. I'm just out here on Butter Lake. On Duck Butter Lake. I'm heading
that is a real place in Arizona.
Yeah, I'm heading to Quiff City after this.
Well, after Packard witnesses, we need to make our map of Arizona.
Yeah.
Duck Butter Lake and Quiff City.
I think it's Queef City. I really do think it's Queef City.
We'll have to rewatch it. You rewatch it.
Oh, no.
James, rewatch it. Let us know. After Packard witnesses Carrie kissing Jake, he kidnaps her and beats up Billy. He tries driving to California, but Carrie resists. The Turbo Interceptor arrives and challenges Packard to a race. Packard accepts and is killed in an explosive head-on collision with the Turbo Interceptor. Loomis calls off the hunt for the mysterious driver, believing it to be futile. So, as much as we've clowned on this movie, it did set out to be one thing, I think quite simply, which is a racing movie. A street racing movie. You mentioned Big D, The Fast and the Furious. This is years before that. And it did a great job capturing what racing in the desert is like. I love cars and motorcycles. I love driving and riding in the desert. But it does present some dangers that I didn't get into in other parts of the country. Like I did most of my motorcycling in Ohio. That's really where I put on some serious miles. And it's pretty flat. You've got good visibility. Roads stay fairly straight. Here in Arizona, the elevation changes a lot. There are lots of big rock formations alongside the road, and that also causes the roads to wind a lot. And sand can totally steal your traction and cause you to slide out. Areas like Tucson, areas like Flagstaff, they're twisty heaven. So if you're on a motorcycle and you're just going on a leisurely ride with your friends, that could be a lot of fun. But if you're trying to race a person, this can be deadly. And in fact, during the filming of this movie, cameraman Bruce Ingram died while making this film, just as proof as how much they wanted to be in the action with the footage that they were getting.
Was he killed by drifters or smugglers? No, but okay, it's a racing film.
Yeah.
And I understand the budget was limited. So they do the traditional camera low to the ground. So it looks like you're going super fast. But at no point do they encounter, other than the few other like normal cars on the road, there's no near misses. There's no getting bumped off and heading into the sand and coming back. It's kind of an anticlimactic chase. Each race is kind of short. Wraith pulls ahead. He stops in the road. You go off a cliff. I would have liked to have seen some intense in-car action to explain why Packard's gang of misfits, they'll drink like hydraulic fluid, but they have to wear their helmet while racing. I need to know that.
I forgot about the helmet thing. The helmet thing is pretty funny. I mean, again, though, we have to remember this movie, and I know we don't try to bring the budget into this. This movie was made on $8 million. So you're putting together a car racing movie with the likes of Charlie Sheen, with the likes of Sherilyn Penn, Randy Quaid, and you're doing it on $8 million plus those amazing special effects. You probably don't have a whole lot left over for anything other than cars going fast near each other.
Sir, I challenge that point with Time Rider. Do you remember Time Rider?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the Baja? I thought that was exhilarating.
Yeah. Yeah, but then you have incest and it kind of balances things out. As Carrie arrives home that night, Jake pulls up in the Turbo Interceptor. Carrie realizes that Jake is a revived form of her dead boyfriend, Jamie. Jake gives his car to Billy and rides off on his dirt bike. He picks up Carrie, whom Loomis is watching from a distance, and together they ride off across the desert highway into the moonlight.
So, listener, if you're confused, Jamie, Jake is Charlie Sheen. He's the resurrected Jamie, who is now in a different body. He goes to the lake. It's one of his first stops back in town. And he just stumbles upon his brother, Billy. And Billy's like, hey, do you want to be friends? Jake should have looked at him and said some reaction like, oh my God, this is my brother. I've been dead. I've been resurrected. I miss him so much. Billy's in pain. He's socially isolated. The first thing he talks about is his brother's death. Does Jake come up with some soothing words or some words of wisdom to ease his pain, or even just hint, hey, I'm sure your brother's in a happy place? He doesn't do any of that shit. Even in the end, he doesn't come clean and tell him, hey, it was me all the time. I love you. Don't worry. I'm in a good place. Don't worry about me. It's not your fault, bro. Take it easy. He just insinuates, yeah, I'm your bro. His brother then wanders out in the street and Billy's like, Jake, Jamie, was that you? His brother is going to be in pain for the rest of his life, wondering, was that him? Just give him a hug and say, I love you.
Yeah, initially, I thought that the reason this was happening in that river scene was that Jake had not developed his humanity yet. That like as he killed off these gang members, he'd become more and more human. But that's not the case because he's also like floating on rafts with Carrie, like just like doing little baby paddles.
He's flirting.
He's flirting. So clearly he's okay. But maybe Jamie/Jake just wasn't the touchy-feely type with his brother. Like he clearly has affection for Carrie, but even with her, when he's trying to advise her on what to do, he's pretty stern. He's like, hey, you got to stand up to Packard. You got to make a stand. And Big D, maybe this is the thing. We're two guys. We've never had brothers. Maybe we just don't understand how men are supposed to relate to each other. Maybe we're the only brothers we've got.
No, Jake is a dick. Because he shows us he's not just there for vengeance. He's there to teach valuable life lessons, like standing up for yourself. Carrie, you got to be brave. Take a stand. And she's like, you're right. Where was that for your brother Billy?
Not only that, but he's fucked over Billy in like a million ways. I was kind of surprised at the end. First of all, Carrie damaged, right? She has no issue leaving town with the revenant form of her murdered boyfriend who just showed up in town and like killed 5 people. Like, sure, seems safe. Let's go. Even more reckless, though, was Jake's decision to give Billy the Turbo Interceptor, right? That car has been witnessed at the scene of multiple homicides. Nobody has seen the driver. No one's been able to identify that. It could be anybody. Billy's going to take it out on that first drive in Brooks, and he's going to end up in jail.
Everybody's seen that car. Forget about the fact, how are you going to register that at the Arizona DMV? You can't. It's a one of a kind. But thankfully, Gene, besides, revenge, the demons, they were kind enough to type up a user's manual and schematics and put it into the car. It didn't disappear like the starlights going down the highway. It's there. And Carrie, you're 100% correct. She is damaged goods. She doesn't report Packard that she's suspected of killing Jamie. Later on, when she says, you were there that night, you did. So it's always been there. She's known that he was part of it, and she still became his girl. And it's pretty bad. And the fact that she doesn't even question in Ghost. Okay, let's just say, I don't want to give a hypothetical that could make you sad, Gene. So I'm going to use Ghost. Demi Moore, right? When she encounters Whoopi Goldberg and Whoopi says, I'm channeling your dead husband. She wants proof. Okay, give me some secret facts that only you would know. Where did we meet? Where did we kiss? What was our favorite nicknames for each other? Carrie doesn't do any of that. And that has me asking some questions. What's more likely? Because we've called into question Jake's treatment of Billy. So I'm left saying, was that actually Jamie? What's more likely for us as viewers and people in the town? Is it more likely that Jamie's murdered, he's resurrected into a new body, he's given a magical car, he's immortal, he returns to town, he convinces Carrie to fall in love with him, he uses his immortal powers and his magical car to get revenge on everyone. Then he permanently takes this new body and this new form and rides off into the sunset. Or is it more likely that Jake, a drifter, rode into town, saw Carrie, she's hot, she's vulnerable, she's damaged, she's on the side of the road, and he decides, I'm going to manipulate the situation. All he had to do was sit there, listen to the facts, and he could have played it off. Oh, yeah, that's me. That mysterious guy killing people? Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I'm really your dead boyfriend. Let's go.
I mean, did you miss the whole exploding car and exploding body, always coming back to life, disappearing leg braces, the scars that meet the scars are kind of good giveaway.
I know that Rughead thinks he sees him in the mask. Did you see Charlie Sheen's form get in that car or out of that car?
That's a good point. But the scars.
Yeah, he's a drifter. He's living in Arizona. Yeah, nobody in Arizona survives without scars.
Why would a magical car, if it truly was a magical car, have a Dodge emblem on it? Why is it a Dodge?
I don't know. In Needful Things, the devil drove a Tucker.
You know what it really is? It's the incredibly smooth and romantic conversation he first had with her when he rolled into town, where he said, hey, do you have a boyfriend? And she said, no way. And then he just said, okay, bye, and then drove off. That's how you get them. That's how you get a girl. She'll believe anything you say after that.
Some people call that grooming.
Well, James, I hope that this doesn't sound like we're shitting on the concept of the movie. I think some of the execution wasn't great, and there was a lot of questions left unanswered. You know how much we love those. The Wraith is conceptually really cool. But as we get to the end, I was expecting a lot of this shit to get wrapped up. And I have some suggestions that could have made it so much better. I'm not trying to retcon the movie, but maybe if they did like a reboot, this is how I would do it, right? One is you take like a page out of the Crow's playbook, right? A couple is killed by this gang. The murdered teen comes back. So Jamie comes back and he gets revenge on the gang. There's no Carrie, right? Beyond the murder. She dies and that's it. So there's no love story there other than the tragic loss. And he's just there for revenge and that's it. If you don't like that one, how about this one? The boy is killed. So Jamie's killed. Carrie, she survives. And there's some way that she starts receiving mysterious messages from this guy. So if you did it today, it could be like on the internet or, through an app or something like that. But let's say back then, we're in the 80s. She's into ham radios, right?
A lot of girls are into that.
Hey, the King Bee's sister was like to listen in on our conversations all the time. But she's into ham radios. She's talking to truckers and stuff like that. And suddenly she starts talking nightly with this stranger who befriends her. And then these gang members start getting wiped out one by one. And eventually she discovers through the conversations that it is her dead boyfriend she's talking to. And they never actually reunite, right? That it's only this voice and that's all she gets, right? And finally, if you don't like any of that, you want to go a little more like Dark Man on this one. Okay, there's a new kid in town. He's horrifically scarred, but he finds kindness in Billy and Carrie and befriends him. Like you would enjoy Big D, kind of that brotherhood also being formed. Here's the thing. He didn't die. When they stabbed him and put him in the trunk and shit, somehow he magically survived that or whatever. He can't feel pain and he has a deadly car. It's not magical. It's just a fucking beast of a car. Like Dark Man on wheels. I could go for any of those over what we got in the Wraith.
It's all very interesting.
And I didn't need AI to do it.
I do like the communication through the radio, keeps the mystery. He doesn't have to pretend that he's Charlie Sheen and romance. Yeah, that would be like Frequency. I think there's a bit of that communication beyond the grave.
Yeah, but then we don't get to see Charlie Sheen in a denim jacket on a dirt bike with no shirt on.
It's one of the highlights of the film.
Well, now's the time in the podcast where we give our Shat score. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is living in a small Arizona town where every roller skating burger girl is a perfect 10. We didn't even talk about that burger stand. That was hot. It was a hot burger stand. 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie. It is offering a girl your blood, your protection, and a free trip to California, only to have her leave you for a dead guy. I'll go first. I had a lot of fun watching this movie. It had goofy costumes. It had cool cars. It had hammy performances. But it is by no means a good movie. I can't say it's a good movie. You should never see a movie that features the reincarnated form of a murdered boy slowly floating on a raft in the Arizona sun with bikini girls. It doesn't make sense. The tones don't mesh. Nick Cassavetes, as you correctly pointed out, James, terrible actor. And we'll get back to that because he's in Face Off. So when we cover Face Off for Frank Falls, we'll talk all about Nick Cassavetes and his inability to act. I'm glad this movie was made, but I can't say I'm eager to ever watch it again. It's 3.5 wipes for me.
So I think, again, we have to take into consideration the sequence of the films and I was coming off of Tango and Cash, which I felt like I was stuck in that prison with Tango and Cash. It was a rough, I watched it twice. That was almost 4 hours of my life. I won't go back. So this felt light. I had to watch it on Freevr. So I got commercial breaks. I got a whole bunch of commercials about Verizon, and I could choose my own plan. So it was light. The film, it's like a Cliff Note version of a plot. They don't go into any background characters. There's no motivation. I like the lack of exposition. We don't find out why he came back. There's no Ghost Rider transformation into the form for vengeance. But overall, it suffers from its budget. It is abbreviated. There's a lot of holes in it. Yes, it was fun, Gene, but I think that's because we're coming off of Tango and Cash. For me, it's a failure other than the car. And for that, I got to go. I don't want to go too hard, but I think it's at least a 4 wipe film.
Wow, 4. I thought with your nostalgia for this movie, you would go easier on it than I would. But I'll take that 4, and that gives us an average wipe score of 3.75 wipes.
So Gene, with that score, that now ties this. Wow, I think that we had discussed this in the previous episode. That now ties this in the 270 spot with Labyrinth, Robin Hood, Men in Tights, Lady Hawk, and the Ice Pirates. There's that Ice Pirates threshold, which you discussed.
Yeah, the Ice Pirates test wins again.
Yeah. Thank goodness this is better than Tango and Cash.
Well, James, I'd love to hear what your score was for this movie. So if you wouldn't mind writing in or giving us a call, you can go to shatpod.com, use the SpeakPipe feature, leave us a voicemail, or of course, write us, as you know, at hosts@shatthemovies.com. Just very curious as to what you would have rated the Wraith. And while you're at it, what you'd rate Tango and Cash. And speaking of voicemail and email, we have a few this week from listeners. We're trying to get them in as quickly as we can. So we apologize for any delays. And the first one comes from John, who's calling in about Return of the Living Dead.
Yo, Shat crew. Most people call in to thank you. That's not me. I'm calling to thank in the guy who commissioned Return of the Living Dead for June 2024. So it's going to be nice waiting for a whole year and a couple months to hear that review. Thanks a lot.
Well, at least you have something to look forward to.
Thanks, John, for calling in. Yeah, it's a year out, so it's good to, have long-term goals. And thank you so much to Kevin E. for commissioning Return of the Living Dead. I think it's going to be a great one. It hurts sometimes to have to wait the year to get to these movies that we're super excited about. And hopefully we'll be better podcasters by that time and able to give Return of the Living Dead the treatment that it deserves.
Agreed.
Next up, we have a voicemail from listener Mike, who is calling in about one of my favorite episodes of Shat the Movie. It's when Roger joined us for Predator 2.
Hey, Shat crew. This is listener Mike. I gotta say, I was listening to a few older episodes recently where Roger was still a regular host on the pod, and I'm gonna say this. He made some remarks at the end of, I think it was the Predator 2 episode or the Point Break episode, where he claimed that the audience must hate him for voting the way that they did and choosing the movies they did. And Roger seems like a nice guy. I wouldn't mind hanging out with Roger, but I don't want to watch a movie with him. Ever, ever, ever. And I have to say, no, the audience does not hate him. We think his judgment on movies is absolute shit, though. The Goonies is a shit movie. Are you kidding me? It's classic. It's a masterpiece. It's timeless. And it's a piece of our childhood. The Ninja Turtles sucked. What are you smoking, Raj? Because I want some of that. Highlander, a bad movie? No, it was an excellent movie. Yes, it had a few flaws. And yes, Sean Connery's accent was one of them. But overall, excellent movie, excellent premise, well done, and I'm not really looking forward to the remake. I'm not really looking forward to any remake, really. But the fact is, there is a remake coming up, directed by Chad Stileski, who did the John Wick films. So I'm sure the fights in the movie will be decent enough. I'm just nervous because remakes. But yes, so no, we don't hate Roger. We don't trust his judgment. And there are several movies that y'all need to go back. You and Gene, Big D and Gene and Ash, because y'all three are excellent. And there are some movies that need to get another look at them. Willow, Ninja Turtles, Highlander, Goonies. These are all classic movies despite Roger's opinions. So that's all I wanted to say this time. I'll be leaving another voicemail because I will. I'm still trying to get up the money to make a commission of my own because I'd love to see someone do Mallrats or something, but I'm fixing to run out of time. So keep it up, Shat Crew. You guys are awesome. Love you.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for the voicemail. I think there's some mixed. It's a mixed bag. We're gonna take some was actually Roger, some was me. So I went back and I looked. Predator 2, I gave 5. Yes, I was the harshest. Roger said 4.5. You said 4.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, we'll take that one. Then we go to Highlander. Roger did a 5. I did 4.5. You did a 4.
I want to point out the pattern here is that I'm oft mistaken for like the cynical one in this podcast. I am very kind and optimistic, and I find joy in many films. Just so for the record.
So now we go to Goonies. Goonies, famously, that was Roger. Roger ruined that. He did a 3. I did 1.5. You did a 2. So that was Roger who hated that. And yes, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I've taken credit for this. That was a punitive score. I was being petty. If you listen to it, the hostility between Roger and I during that recording is pretty rough. It bled through, and I let it affect me. I will go back and rewatch that. It deserves it. It wasn't that bad. I just wanted to see Roger suffer, and I knew that this was a beloved part. It was petty. I'm sorry, people.
Yeah, while we're setting the record straight, also, Mike, to be fair, I shit on Willow. I shit on Highlander. And Roger with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles gave it 0.75, so 3/4 wipe. He was a big fan of that movie. We were actually, Big D and I were surprised that he didn't give it 0 wipes. So, you know, each of us has our days when we, or movies that just trigger us, I guess, and we just cannot stand.
And also, Christopher Lambert, he didn't speak English when they started filming Highlander. So it wasn't just Sean Connery's Spanish accent or whatever that was. There was a lot of trouble on that, but go back and watch it. I bet you he hasn't watched it recently. Go back and watch it.
Big D, I should also point out that this weekend I was at the Phoenix Fan Fusion, which is what they call Comic-Con down here. And they had an entire row of the Ninja Turtles, the guys who were in the actual movies. They called it the Shellabration. And I had the opportunity to meet each of them. Plus, I had an opportunity to meet Stans with Fist from Dances with Wolves, but I was too cheap to pay for photos. So I just waved.
That's nice. I'm sure it made them happy.
It's my dedication to you guys, listeners. All right, next up we have a voicemail from Eric C., who's calling in about Halloween 3.
What's up, Shaq Crew? It's Eric C. I recently watched Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, in anticipation of your podcast. And I couldn't help but think, if the cast of Ninja Scroll had been in that movie, I think it would have been a lot better. Now, hear me out. Those little robot guys that were crushing everyone's faces, Jubei would have slaughtered them with no problem for him. Instead of trying to find a payphone at the end of the movie to call the TV stations and stop that commercial, I think Higuero could have sent one of those sweet messenger falcons out. It would have probably worked a lot better. And of course, the mystery of the Celtic Californian cult town with the weird curfew so they can have pieces of Stonehenge and a Halloween mask. Dakawan would have solved that stuff super quick. No problems. So yeah, I think that's the crossover that we actually do need in this world. And it would have ended probably in like 20 minutes. Been a much shorter movie, but in my opinion, probably a lot better. Anyway, keep up the great work. See you later.
So Big D, let's assume that we could go back and combine Halloween 3 with the cast of Ninja Scroll. Is it a better movie or does it hurt the movie?
I think it's a different movie. There'd be a lot more rape. And I think
just
also
slightly more.
And I think the way you break the curse is you have to have sex with one of the characters. There's a magical vagina that breaks the Shamrock curse.
I mean, that works in Dr. Daniel's favor, definitely. That seems like something you would do, actually. In order to break the curse,
yes,
you got to fuck me.
You must sit on my penis. That is the magical penis from Stonehenge. Yeah, I think that would work.
Well, thank you, Eric, so much for your voicemail. And whatever is fueling that imagination, stick with it. Unless it's a dangerous substance. Next up, we have an email from Chops, who's writing in about Roger and the King Bee. He says, hey, I stumbled on your great podcast late in 2021. I've listened to 95%-ish of all episodes. Also, I've listened from the beginning more than once. I love the progression, the growth, the passion, and the hard work that's clearly gone into this podcast. Couple ideas for you. 1, bring back Roger very occasionally. Yes, he might not be everybody's cup of tea, but he is very entertaining. 2, get Gene's mate in very regularly because he's fucking hilarious. I've had a few drinks as I'm writing this, so I can't remember his name right now. No, nothing. I reiterate, Roger occasionally and Gene's mate, the someone something, regularly. And that suggestion comes from Chops.
So I addressed this before. If you want the rationale of what happened, since he said he listened to 95%, I'm assuming that he listened to the Three Amigos. It's not a question of not thinking Roger was funny. Roger was hilarious.
Funny, yes.
Roger would get the podcast to places we would never go. Topics, stream of consciousness and thoughts would get us to areas that would never be possible without him. That being said, not everything is fun. There's some work that's required. You thanked us for the work. The reason why Roger isn't with us is because Roger just wanted to have the fun part. Roger wanted to show up to the birthday party, eat the cake, and go home. He didn't want to go set up the tables, clean up, do invitations, make sure it went off. So it became an issue not of Roger being funny. I love the guy. I still talk to him daily. So it's not that question. And I wished in some other alternate universe where that would be possible, but there is so much just things that have happened. And Roger actually left the podcast multiple times to where we were doing TV and we said, Roger, either do the work. You can't show up and not watch the film. Somebody's commissioned it, to where we kicked him off. He worked his way back. We had to kick him off again. He worked his way back. So sadly, as much as I love Roger, he's hilarious. I talked to him. I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah, and as for the King Bee, I mean, Big D and I are going to spend the weekend with him this weekend. The guy is, again, fucking hilarious. He's been my best friend since I was 15 years old. We have been through so much together, and he's one of the smartest guys I've ever met. He knows more about movies and TV than I will ever know. And at the same time, though, it's that he would only want to do movies that he wants to do when he wants to do them. Incredibly mercurial, not dependable. And so it's the sort of thing where, again, it's not the sort of dependability that we need. And, kind of getting back to last week, what we talked about with Ash as well, is it's like Big D and I, we have to be here. Like, we have to be here and do the pod, and we're motivated to do so. Like, we love doing this, but it's hard when you have that kind of a fire for the thing and you're willing to set everything aside to get it done. And we look forward to every single movie. We're hungry for 100 more, 200 more. And not everybody's like that. And so it's very hard to match those two things together. So while it is a lot of fun to work with those guys, it doesn't necessarily work as far as putting out a recording, which is a very technical, labor-intensive thing that we have to do every week.
Yeah, I think it's being prepared, and it's taking it serious enough for our listeners who wait a year. You talk about the commission for Return of the Living Dead in 2024. Someone's waiting for that. Someone's excited for that. And to show up and get basic facts of the movie wrong or not pay attention, it's one of the biggest failures in my life. And it gets me upset is that I couldn't get Roger to realize that. And I tried multiple approaches to the detriment of Gene and my relationship and Sarah's relationship and Ash's relationship, that I kept defending Roger and I kept working with him. And I feel like I failed by not getting it to work. But in the end, I love Roger, still talk to him. When I talk to him, I'm like, shit, this would be great to record. But unfortunately, it's just what it is.
Thanks, Chops, for the suggestions. And we love that you're listening to all the older pods. We're loving that you appreciate all the different eras of Shat. And we're right there with you and thinking that some of those episodes are goddamn hilarious.
God, and one thing though, Gene, I'll end with this. I can't listen to, like, let's say the first 5 because I'm such like a stickler now for audio quality. Those first 5 or 6, it is like we were talking with tin cans and a string. It is so bad.
On the upside, nobody paid for those. So we paid for those. Those are our episodes.
I just wish that there was like some way I could go back and remaster them, that I could go back with a clean recording and make the changes. Unfortunately, just like Roger, that ship has sailed.
Speaking of sailing ships, we have one more email, and it comes from Vinny in England, who's calling in about culture. And he says, hey guys, it's me again, that annoying turd from the rainy southeast of England. There's a subject I can't let go any longer. This does show a massive difference between the sickly, sweet, happy nature of the culture of your nation compared to the miserable, cynical nature of Britain. For example, a shop worker in this country wouldn't last a day of saying, have a nice day to the customers without getting punched or headbutted. I am aware it is relative to the people around us, but when you talk about nihilism or your dark, cynical hearts, it brings a smile to my face. You would be seen as positively upbeat and overly chirpy in my world. Ask anyone I know about Pee Wee Herman, and you would get a fairly universal answer. He needed introducing to a baseball bat with 6-inch nails driven through it. Obviously, there are Brits that buck the trend, but most males here can't watch Titanic without vomiting and having the urge to rip out your eyeballs and stomp on them. Yes, you're a much nicer, polite nation. That doesn't make us heartless. AI made me sob uncontrollably as well, but I will make an appeal to your cyclical side. If you haven't watched it, go on Netflix and watch the Ricky Gervais series Afterlife. It is incredible. I cried my way through that as well. Half the time with laughter, the other half with a broken heart. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Well, I'll leave there for now. From the miserable southeast of England, Vinny.
Well, Gene, I got to leave this to you because you've lived there. Do you think the weather has something to do with their less than sunny disposition?
So one of the things a lot of people don't realize about England, because when we think of England, we think of royalty, we think of, Buckingham Palace and opulence, right? And English accents, and it sounds fancy. The income in England is fairly poor and the expenses are intense. And so a lot of the luxuries I think that we have are not afforded there. But in addition to that, yeah, I think that the weather might have something to do with it, or the fact that you've got so many nations with so many cultures just on your borders, right? We've got the Canadians that are pretty much like us, and the Mexicans are fairly similar. Out in the UK, you got, all sorts of crazy things going on. I know there's a body of water between them and Europe, but really it's all connected. But I would say, Vinny, that don't underestimate the nihilism over here. Don't underestimate our darkness. For one, I don't know, Big D, if you've got feelings on this, but like I can watch the BBC Office. It's one of my favorite series. And the BBC does something really brilliant where when they run a TV show, it's like 2 seasons, 3 seasons. They said what they're going to say and it's over. That's it. There's a natural arc. They wrap it up. There's no dragging out 8 to 10 seasons. I cannot watch NBC's The Office. It's a very American show. Everything is over the top. Everything is silly, silly, silly. And I don't know if I could put my finger on what the difference is between the two cultures, but I would say that I'm an Anglophile through and through, and I prefer the way they do things.
And as a New Yorker, I enjoy sarcasm. So that's one of my favorite part of the Brits. I don't think it's a nihilistic view. I think it's just a very matter-of-fact delivery, and they always have an opinion on everything. So I love it. And that's in my limited time in London.
Well, thank you so much, Vinny. Keep on writing in. I mean, fuck Vinny. No, thank you, Vinny, so much. Keep on writing in. We love hearing you here in sunny Arizona and sunny Florida, where every day is a race through the canyons and every night is a nap by the swamp. I don't know. What do you guys do over there? By the beach? Every night is a nap on the beach.
We have beaches. What are you talking about?
Listen, all I've seen is Great
Miami?
Expectations.
Yeah. We have Miami. We have 2 coastlines. We're a peninsula, Gene. We're surrounded by beaches.
You know what you don't have? Thousands of Disney jobs.
Well, you have smugglers and bandits.
It's true. We do.
Well, Gene, next week, when the warrior Beowulf learns that the inhabitants of the outpost are being killed by monstrous creatures named Grendels, he offers to keep the king, I don't even want to try to pronounce that word, safe fighting off the beast. The beleaguered fighters are grateful for his help, but the warrior named Roland grows jealous of Beowulf when he sees him with the king's daughter. As Beowulf learns more about Grendel, he realizes how much danger they are all in. Commissioned by one of our great longtime commissioners and kind soul all around, Emmett C. Came out in 99. No experience with this, Gene. I know it was a cartoon recently with Angelina Jolie, but I know it's a book, apparently, but again, no experience with any of those.
I wonder what it could be. No, I have read it. I have not seen this version of it, so I'm excited for it. Thank you so much, Emmett, for commissioning it. And thank you, James, for commissioning the Wraith. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media, share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next week for the following movie.
In the future lies a fortress at the edge of darkness. The enemy is at the gate, but the real terror is within. A man more than mortal, born half of heaven and half of hell, is their only salvation.
No sane man would come here to face this thing.
I'm not like other men.
That you will have to prove. You can sense it. You can feel it.
Christopher Lambert is...
You should be dead.
Many times.
Beowulf.